Welcome to the Sacred Feminine Power podcast, where we explore the many facets of feminine power and why it is so important for women and for men to step into this power in our world at this time. This is Emmy from Feminine Revered, and my magical guest for today is Gregory Ripley. Gregory is a nature and forest therapy guide and a Taoist priest in the 22nd generation of the Chuan-Zen Longmen tradition. He holds a bachelor's degree in Asian Studies from the University of Tennessee and a master's degree in acupuncture from the Northwestern Health Sciences University. He's the author of the Hundred Remedies of the Tao, Tao of Sustainability, and Voice of the Elders, and he lives in Golden Valley, Minnesota. Welcome, Gregory.
Great. Thanks for having me, Emmy.
Absolutely. It's a blessing to have you with us, and I can't wait to learn from you today. Now, since my podcast is called Sacred Feminine Power, I love to start by asking my guests, what does sacred feminine power mean to you personally?
Yeah, I think to me it speaks of a lot of qualities which are not exclusively female, but are most embodied and expressed by women. And that would be qualities like nurturing, even holding space, more creative, like the creative principle, things like this. There's a concept in Taoism and Chinese medicine called yang sheng, which means basically nurturing life. And so I tend to think of that sort of idea of nurturing. And so, like I said, that's not something that's exclusively embodied by women, but is probably most recognizably and most emblematically embodied by women.
Beautiful. I love that. And I have a feeling we're going to dive a little bit deeper into something you just opened up there a little bit later on, Greg. But before we go there, I would love for you to share a challenge that you have faced that's really helped you to activate this power within you.
Well, I mean, gosh, the biggest one would probably be parenting. It's something that can be a challenge on any given day, and certainly has been. Yeah, in my life, at a certain point, I shifted over to be the stay-at-home parent, taking care of my daughters, and so yeah, that's been a huge part of my life, of course. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. What are you finding to be the most challenging aspect of parenting? I've got two kids as well, so I'm curious to know.
Gosh. Well, it's I think part of it is that as they're always growing and changing, right? As soon as you think you've got something sort of figured out, that they grow and they change, and you get new problems to deal with. So um, yeah, gosh, you're like, okay, I know how to deal with toddlers now. Oh, wait, no, they're not toddlers anymore. And like, oh, okay, I know how to deal with kids, and oh, now they're going through puberty, and they're not exactly kids anymore. They're not really adults either, but they're somewhere in between, and they're trying to figure things out. We're trying to figure things out. All those sorts of things. Um, and then, of course, every every kid is different, and so you think you've got something figured out with one, and then the other one is different, and so you have to figure things out all over again. So
Yeah, absolutely. I can certainly relate to everything that you just said there, Gregory. Absolutely. What would you say is the divine meaning in these challenges that you're facing as a parent on a day-to-day basis often?
well, as they grow, you're forced to grow as well, right? So we're done with our development as far as our physical development into adults, but as adults, when we don't continue to grow, we stagnate. I think both, mentally, spiritually, physically in every way, right? When we become too sedentary, then we physically, stagnate and kind of start to degenerate early and age earlier than we should. Um, when we don't continue to grow spiritually and um, continue to learn intellectually, we stagnate as well, and our growth just kind of stops. You always have people in your lives who um, kind of peak early in their life, and they just decide like, okay, this is who I am. I'm never going to be any more or any different than this, and they just kind of seem to start to age early, and they're always looking backwards, right, to their past of some glory days or something. And it's really important, I think, in all aspects of our life to always be growing and learning, and progressing.
That's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Taoist path is very poignant about this as well. I would love to hear a little bit about your wisdom that you've gained through your path as a Taoist priest, and what is it that the Taoist would say in relation to us needing to constantly grow and not become those stagnated versions of ourselves?
Yeah, I think very much along the same lines. In Taoism, nature is used as an example always, or as a we learn things from nature, and so we can just look around ourselves and see that things need to progress and grow in a natural way and continue to grow, or else they stagnate. One of the favorite Taoist metaphors is always water, and stagnant water isn't good for much, other than swamp gases or something like that. But so, as water continues to flow, and to stay clean and clear, it's important for us as well. So that adaptability of water as well, that we, as circumstances change around us, we have to learn to change with them. We have to be able to grow into whatever circumstances have for us. And when we refuse to, and we decide no, that I am this way, or that this is how I am, and it doesn't matter what circumstances are like around me, we basically end up fighting with life. We're like fighting with reality, as instead of accepting reality for what it is, and adapting to it and adapting with it, and making progress in our lives.
Mm, so very true. And you're raising a really, really important point there. And at the same time, as much as we need to adapt and look at what's going on in our surroundings and adapt to what is going on, what is the reality in any given moment, I have a
Mhm.
feeling that in terms of sustainability of humankind, sustainability of our planet, we also need to be able to say no when we see something going wrong. Or would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, part of that adapting is, adapting our systems as well, because of course they are an extension of us, and as a community, as a society, as a global community, we are responsible for all the systems we put in place, right? And so, if our systems are not working, then certainly they need to be adapted and changed as well. So, for example, with climate change, you know we have answers already. We just don't have the collective will to uh, put these answers into place. So we have, and of course, there's always people who are waiting for better efficiency or whatever, and those things will come. Solar panels every day are getting more efficient, and they're constantly making new discoveries in technology that will be more and more helpful, and will solve, help solve our problems, help us adapt to the changing climate circumstances. But um, it's really political will, and of course, then that gets even more complicated because, of course, there are the people who are denying reality and fighting tooth and nail to hold on to money that may be being made um, you know uh, by continuing to kind of hold us back in that regard. So once money's involved, it always gets more complicated.
Yeah, for sure. That is so very true as well. And something that I think all of us really need to start reflecting around what is our relationship to money and how are we working with or using money for the betterment of
Yeah,
humanity or the collective.
definitely, and that's money certainly becomes a form of power in our society. Well, I suppose in all human societies, it always has in one form or another. But certainly we've given it perhaps more power than it deserves. It serves a purpose, um, but we've sort of made it. Um, I kind of feel like we've done things backwards. Like if someone is, you know, worthy of respect or um, has great wisdom or something like that, it makes sense to sort of give them power or give them perhaps more power in in a group dynamic. But we've kind of said, oh, if you have money, you have power, regardless of whether you deserve or are worthy of more power than the next person. Um, but yeah, that may be a that may be a longer discussion.
Yeah, well, I welcome those kinds of discussions on this podcast because they are so, so very needed. And let's
Yeah,
face it, we're not going to change as a humanity unless we actually address some of these deeply rooted issues that, as you
yeah,
say, are
certainly.
holding us back. So thank you for bringing that into our conversation. That's so, so very important. Now, you've recently published a new book, which I mentioned in the introduction, The Hundred Remedies of the Tao.
Hmm.
Congratulations on that.
Thanks
And
so much.
absolutely, I would love to hear you speak a little bit more about what this book is all about and why it was important for you to write it.
Well, it's a translation and commentary on a an old Taoist text from it's probably from the 5th or 6th century, somewhere in there. Um, and it's actually a precepts text. So usually these are just kind of like a list of rules, basically. But in this case, um, it's framed as a set of like spiritual remedies, basically. Uh, the title is the statutes of the Hundred Remedies, or so the word that's translated here is remedies. It means medicine or like medicinal remedy, basically. So like an herbal, if you were taking an herbal formula, it might be you might call it the same thing. So um, these hundred spiritual remedies, I just thought are a very approachable way to look at things like spiritual precepts or ethics. And it's not so much a list of like thou shalt do this and not do that. It's much more like listing sort of positive qualities and saying this is a remedy. So it's like, since there's 100, it kind of covers the gamut of a lot of situations you'll find yourself in life and problems you'll encounter, and these are remedies for problems you may be having. So,
Mm.
and it's even though it's originally intended for it probably would have been for monastics originally. It's really relatable, and these are, humanity hasn't changed much as much as our technology has changed in amazing ways. over the years, I think human nature is basically the same. And so, reading through these, anybody would immediately recognize things in their own lives today that these would apply to. So,
Mm. Sounds like a super, super important book for all of us to read and really take to heart. So thank you for birthing that.
my
Greg,
pleasure.
absolutely. Now, Greg, what's been coming to mind? And if you don't want to go down this route, that's fine. You can just let me know and say no. But I have a feeling that you have something weighty to say about this as well, and that is in relation to how we are as humanity, not all of us, but certain parts of humanity are pushing more and more the advancement of artificial intelligence and
Mm,
really in many ways changing human beings into part machine almost. And I would
yeah.
just love to hear your perspective and perception on that.
Yeah, I think the yeah, it's an interesting thing to where I think if it is, I mean, like anything else in technology, it's a tool, right? It's something we've developed that allows us to do more than we would otherwise be able to do. And I think with AI, the biggest danger is that it's like outsourcing our own creativity and our own um, abilities. So, if it's treated as a tool and used as a tool, it could be very useful. If it begins to replace our own creativity and our own thought, then it becomes very dangerous to where it can just dumb us down, basically. So if we, for example, if we just start using AI for art, and just start using AI for all movies and things like that, right? It's replacing people. So it's replacing actors, it's replacing writers, it's replacing artists. And so then we find ourselves in a situation where if people can't do those things and make a living and pursue their art in various ways, um, and people just say, "Oh, we'll just have AI do it for us." Well, great, but that it's great to use a tool like that when you are relieving people from some form of drudgery or something, right? But technology that takes our creative spark away from us really, I think, is dehumanizing. Creativity is like with all of life. I mean, creativity is like the spark of life in many ways, right? Whether we're talking about creating a new life physically or whether we're creating new ideas, um, new thoughts, new visions in art, in visual arts, or even things like movies, right? People are taking ideas and making them um, kind of a reality, or like in a bringing those thoughts to light so that others can see their vision. um, and so if we outsource everything to AI, I think we lose something that's very vital to our humanity.
Mm. I couldn't agree with you more. Everything that you're saying is resonating very strongly, and thank you for articulating it so very clearly. And I think we are, as humanity, again, some part of humanity, heading in a pretty scary direction with all of that. And
Hmm.
I'm hoping that with more and more people who think like you, come being at the forefront and really bringing through change at the grassroots level, perhaps even on a global level, it's I'm hoping that it's going to change the way we are moving forward on our planet.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully.
Hopefully so, yeah. Well, Gregory, you are also a nature and forest therapy guide, and I would love to hear from you a little bit more about what does it mean to be involved in nature or forest therapy? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I mean, on the one hand, it's an idea as old as or older than humanity, I suppose, and that is just that being in nature, immersed in nature, is good for us on every level. Physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, we are most ourselves. And healthiest, in nature. We evolved in nature, of course, and when we cut ourselves off from that for too long, we begin to suffer. So the the modern incarnation of this idea that has become nature and forest therapy, most people are familiar with from Japan, Shinrin-yoku, or the idea of forest bathing, and that was really a modern kind of take on this idea that they came up with in the 1980s when they were having lots of health issues with, office workers being inside all day and artificial lighting and working long hours and just having all these disease processes and all kinds of negative health outcomes happening. And so the government was kind of kind of spooked by this, of course, understandably, as they should be. And so they started to do research into forest bathing and found that just being in nature, being around, especially in forests, but it's true in any natural environment, but especially in forests, um, since we've evolved along with the natural world and with trees. They have certain chemicals and compounds that they release as part of their sort of immune response that it turns out our immune system really likes, and it has a positive effect on our immune system. And so spending time in nature will lower your blood pressure, and you'll produce more what they call natural killer cells that you know um, help prevent cancer and things like this. And so um, it's good for your heart, good for your blood pressure, good for your immune system, just on and on a physical basis. And then, of course, emotionally, anxiety and depression and all these things, sort of, we're able to self-regulate better when we spend an adequate time in nature. And then, um, especially the techniques of a system like nature and forest therapy, um, it ends up sort of being like a guided meditation process, except it's more about, what the guide does is really reintroduce people into a relationship with the natural world. So if a lot of people feel very disconnected from nature, and so uh, one of the slogans of nature and forest therapy is that uh, the guide opens the doors, but the forest is the therapist. And so it's really yeah, it's really about holding space, or at least bridging that gap between um, the individual participants and the space that nature is already holding for us, and so transitioning people into that space so that they can find what they need directly from nature.
That is so beautiful. And again, so very needed, especially for people who live in big cities, urbanized spaces, and areas where nature isn't necessarily anywhere near. And to be able to
Yeah,
get that
yeah.
break and go into a forest, it really works magic at a very deep cellular level. So beautiful. Well, Gregory, you are also the author of The Voice of the Elders. And this title, when I read it for the first time, really just grabbed me. And I
Mhm.
would love for you to share a little bit about what this book is all about.
That one is actually a novel, so
Ah,
it's a bit different. It's funny. A lot of the same themes that have shaped my life and are part of my work in different ways as far as connecting with nature, um, dealing with climate change, and then of course Taoist ideas are all thrown in there. Um, it sort of took on a life of its own and became something something else. But it is yeah, a novel that deals with climate change, and there's a heavy dose of Taoism in there. And it kind of is a little bit sci-fi, a little bit thrillery, a little bit sort of spiritual transformation story. There's a little everything there. There's probably too much in there. That might have been, there might be too much for some people in there. I think some people, if you're interested in those ideas, I think it'll draw you in further. If you're not really ready for all of that stuff, it might be a little like, what is going on here? But um, anyway, it's available, on Amazon. Uh, Easy enough to find, but yeah, something I had to try. Something I had to try.
Awesome. I love that you've tried. Sounds very fascinating as well. Beautiful. Well, if our audience wanted to find out more about you, Gregory, and perhaps get in touch with you, what is the easiest place for them to go to?
Yeah, my website is just gregoryripley.com. So that's very easy and straightforward. And on most social media, I'm at Gregory Ripley as well. And so, yeah, pretty easy to find these days, especially now that the new book is out. It's kind of everywhere, since it's got good worldwide distribution. And I think it is out and available in the US. As a paperback, ebook, and even as an audiobook as well. I think overseas it maybe is not quite out yet, but I think in January it'll probably be out everywhere else if it isn't yet. So
Okay, wonderful. Great. Thank you for sharing about that as well. Now, Gregory, is there anything else that is arising in this moment that you feel is really important to share with our listeners?
um, gosh, I don't know. Other than I always keep coming back to the idea that we're all in this together, and we can't really afford to become become too splintered and too we can't fall back into our own camps, and we've got to realize that we're all in this together, whether we're looking at climate change or political conflicts, anything else. We've got to come together and figure out ways to solve these problems together as a global community, and we can't just keep fighting and going backwards here. So I suppose that's the biggest thing to me, is that we've got to realize we're all in this together.
Mm. Words of wisdom there again, Gregory. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for coming on to the show. I really enjoyed chatting with you. And this is really a call to action for our listeners to grab a copy of the 100 Remedies of the Tao and really soak in the wisdom of these ancient messages and tips on how to truly be a human being and lead a life that is a good life. Thank you, Gregory.
Thank you, Emmy, so much.
Absolutely. Now, everybody, just for a moment, let's focus our intention and our awareness on this really positive energy that's been activated. And imagine sending this to everyone and sending it to everyone and everything on our planet. So remember that we are all truly one, and that the more of us have the courage to step into our sacred feminine power, the more quickly our planet will also heal and ascend. Thank you so much for listening.